Alrighty, hello. I am your radio host for today, and we got a bit of a different format. But I get these laughing tracks now, so it works out. And plus, I get this radio-esque sounding voice, so you guys are welcome. Because this is what you get to hear all the way down here. Alrighty, so there wasn't an episode yesterday, but there was a couple things that we missed. Um, so, first article I have up here from usnews.com. It says Russia says NATO is preparing allies for conflict with Moscow, and recruiters NATO actively in Eastern Europe and the Black Sea area is aimed at preparing its allies for conflict with Moscow, which creates additional risks for Russia's security. The RIA news agency cited Russia's foreign ministry as saying Thursday. And now I was looking, and that is the only thing on this article. Only thing. Which is unfortunate. But got different ones. So basically, all I missed. So we're going over to the BBC now. Alrighty. Zelensky hits back after Russia links Ukraine to Moscow attack. So Moscow had a shooting. There was a shooting, and well, Russia's trying to point the blame on anyone besides themselves. As news of the Moscow concert hall attack broke on Friday, Ukrainians knew what was coming. Kyiv would be blamed. The next thing they expected was more drones and more missiles. The accusations began almost immediately. They were just hints at first until President Vladimir Putin openly claimed that the men who attacked Moscow had tried to flee to Ukraine, helped by contacts there. So we already know Russia's full of it, but they're even more full of it at this point. Everyone can agree with me, right? Right? R- Um, the Sunday, and then shortly before on Sunday came around, the sounds of explosions in Kyiv when Mr. Putin made his comments on Saturday in an address to the Russian nation Islamic State group. Extremists had already announced they had carried out the killings. The U.S. confirmed that it passed on intelligence of a threat earlier this month. Now, IS have released a horrendously graphic video of their massacre, filmed on body cams, including shouts of "God is greatest" from the attackers. So the fact that they recorded this, that part's even worse. The fact that they actively recorded this and then sent it out. Oh boy. In in his evening statement on Saturday, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky was visibly angry that his country was being blamed. He described the Russian president and others in Moscow as scum for linking their attack there to Kyiv. He suggested a miserable Russian leader was more concerned about pinning the attack on Kyiv than reassuring his own citizens. Mr. Lazinski has turned the tables on Moscow, saying it has sent hundreds of thousands of its own terrorists to Ukraine since the full-scale invasion began in February 2022. Oh dear God. He said those troops will now brutaling Ukraine instead of protecting Russia against the real threat of extremism. They have burned our cities, they've tortured and raped. Ukrainian police have opened thousands of criminal cases against Russian soldiers since February 2022, including one killing we investigated where two unarmed civilians were shot in the back. Earlier on Saturday, the military intelligence director in Kyiv called for a specific Russian claim that and a gunman were caught trying to flee across the Ukrainian border absurd. It is an active front line teeming with Russian soldiers and security services. The idea anyone would head there after staging a major attack on Moscow, Andriy Yuzov argued, would be either suicidal or stupid. According to Russian officials, the suspects were captured in the Bizhnok region on their way to West Ukraine. If that is generally where the car was stopped, and we do not know, they could have been heading for Belarus. It is far easier a route out of Russia than crossing a minefield to get to Ukraine. Videos now circulating on social media shows the detention of the suspected attackers and the part of their investigation. Other other one shows a Russian agent trying to force a man to eat a piece of his own ear, which has been severed. He spits it out in another video. His head is banged and his face is covered in blood. Any confessions that emerge after such torture could not be treated as reliable. You had to torture them? What? I'm. Why would you torture them? Like, I know torture's it's understandable, but it's not going to get you the correct information that you're seeking out of them. They're just gonna say it so you stop torturing them. The video clips were presumably released to showcase a tough response, but that follows an attack which the security services failed to stop or see coming. So in his address, Mr. Zelensky suggested Russians ask the questions of their own intelligence agencies rather than blaming Ukraine. That would include asking whether information from the U.S. was ignored, but Putin's Russia has been purged of a political opposition and independent media, leaving no one to really hold the authorities to account. In his address, Ukraine's president also alluded to a dark theory raised earlier by his military intelligence agency that the Russian authorities themselves were linked to the attacks in Moscow. The the supposed motive was to bolster Mr. Putin's hold on power, rally support for his war, and further mobilization. The comments harked back to long-standing suspicions in Russia over the bombing of the apartment block in 1999 that was the trigger of Vladimir Putin, who was prime minister at the time, to launch a war on the Chechen Republic. But Russia and Ukraine are now engaged in a format war, as well as fighting on the battlefield. The IS video and claimed it carried out the attack would cut across Kyiv's allegations, just like it did the accusations from Moscow. Oh, gee God. The more I read about Putin and his supposed claims on what's all happened, the more I slowly lose my mind and go insane. Because it makes zero sense. Why would you just. Why would you stage your own attack to bolster power. You're killing your citizens. Why not let them speak out? Like, I understand that they don't have like the bit of free democracy that we have, but they don't have to do. They could give them a bit of freedom. Like a bit's not that much to ask for. Anyway, Sunday's morning's missile launches targeting Ukraine feels like Russia's war as usual rather than any escalation in response to the Chorus City Hall attack yet. Oh dear God. Before dawn on Sunday, there were also reports of Ukrainian strikes on Crimea, the peninsula Russia annexed illegally from Ukraine in 2014. It takes time to prepare a large-scale missile strike, and this is the second by Russia since early on Friday. The major cities of Kharkov is still largely without power after the attack that day, targeting energy infrastructure all over the country. Ukraine certainly braced for the worst after all the rhetoric from Moscow, but the Kursk Hall attack suggests Russia is facing a real significant danger within its borders, not the fake threat it concerned from Ukraine to justify Vladimir Putin's invasion in 2022. The worry is for the Russian president, a man who hates to look weak, which is why Russia is so keen to deflect the blame towards Kiev. Instead, even when the evidence points in a very different direction. And then that is the end of the BBC article, and I have a video that I believe is what happened. So I'm just gonna go with a quick. That is the video I have of the gunman at Concert Hall. And it is very unfortunate this happens. It's also even more unfortunate that Russia has nothing else but to try and throw it over at Ukraine. That's kind of sad. But there's one article I do want to see if I can find. Belarus border situation. Okay. So this takes us a little bit outside of the borders of Ukraine, but this fits perfectly with what we're talking about. So Putin's key ally inspects tanks battalion next to NATO border. Vladimir Putin's closest ally, Alexander Lukashov, has threatened military action if Belarus border is breached in its latest swipe at NATO, which is conducting exercises in the region. Lukashenko, the only post-Soviet president Belarus has known, made his comments during the inspection of his forces in Ashme district in the Olgando region, 20 miles from the frontier of the alliance member Lithuania. I will say publicly, any provocation must be suppressed by armed means. Lukashenko said on Tuesday, according to Belarusian state news agencies Belta. If you violate the state border, you will be destroyed. No one should stand on ceremony. I don't know. But any violation of the state border is subjected to destruction. They only understand power, he added. Belta News Agency noted in its report the accent of the Alliance's Statfist Defender 2024 exercise, which started in January and ended on May 31st. Belta reported how infantry and mechanized battalions in Germany and the U.S. have gathered at the Harbrod training ground in Lithuania, around 9 miles away from the Belarusian border. So training exercises that Belarus don't like because, just some powerhouses of history are just over there. Just over there saying hi. These these could be used to carry out provocative actions involving sabotage and reconnaissance groups and illegal armed groups, Belta said. We should not relax, Lukashenko said. We are sure that if we do, they will attack us. Newsweek has contacted the Lithuanian government and the NATO for comment. So, that's all I have for you today, and oh my god, is this a wild one. So, I hope you all have had a marvelous time over here. Um, I will see you all again, and thank you all for stopping by. Subscribe for more news, but until then, bye-bye!